Yeah, so again, my name is Greg VanDeusen. I'm one of the attorneys at David Carrier's office. And, I've been with David for about 3 years now, but before I jumped on board with David, uh, out of my 29 years of experience as an attorney, 20 of that was devoted to representing individuals before the Social Security Administration, primarily seeking out disability benefits, which is one of the benefits you and I pay for out of our paycheck. But I decided to join David because he and I share, I guess, a mutual interest, mutual devotion to helping the middle class out, because Medicaid and Social Security disability benefits are, in my opinion, pretty close brother and sister, in that these are benefits that both you and I pay for. And when it comes time for us to knock on the door for benefits, again, that you and I have paid for, the government doesn't open the door for us. Essentially, we have to kick the door down. And this is especially true with the middle class, okay? And I'll go head to toe with anybody regarding the middle class that we are the driving force, the engine behind the economy. But when it comes to the government, they're always going after the middle class. And again, this is one benefit that, in my opinion, the government comes after, in that they make it very, very difficult for people to receive Social Security disability benefits at a time of need. Now, I just wanted to tell everybody that my philosophy is that working is good for the mind, the body, and soul. But Social Security is a safety net, okay? We pay into the system as a safety net, because if we fall into hard times, and that if we become ill or disabled to no fault of our own, we could be in a lot of financial hurt if we didn't have the safety net. So this is what Social Security disability benefits is all about, is a safety net to get us through those rough waters and hopefully get back to work. And so, and for a lot of you may think this is boring stuff, and I understand that, but if you really get into the heart and soul of Social Security disability benefits and how it became to be, I think it's pretty interesting. So some interesting facts about Social Security benefits is that, we didn't always have this. So back before 1935, there was no plan for retirement benefits or a plan for people if they were injured on the job. So the Social Security Disability Act was passed in 1935, and the first person to receive a Social Security benefit was an individual in 1937 who received 17 cents. Okay, and so as you can imagine, this is a brand new program, and the government is still trying to figure it out. And from 1937 to 1939, they were only issuing lump sum payments for Social Security benefits. In 1939, they changed the plan to a monthly benefit. So the first person to receive a monthly benefit, and I think this is kind of interesting, is Ida Mae Fuller, and essentially this is her claim to fame. She was the first individual to receive a monthly disability benefit. Right now, there's been about 453 million Social Security cards issued. And regarding the Social Security card, it's always fascinated me because, what are these numbers that are on our card? What do they stand for? So back in the day, the first three numbers, they represented your geographical location where you resided. And Social Security, as time went on, they decided that they needed to transition to a random drawing of numbers just to ensure that the 9-digit number on your Social Security number card prevailed. So right now it's a randomized number selection process, but back in the day, the first three numbers was where you lived. Another question that comes up with the Social Security card, which I find interesting, is that when you pass away, does the Social Security Administration reuse your number? And the answer to that is no, they do not. There's another myth out there that your Social Security number identifies you by your gender. And this was a myth, that started out when Social Security Administration first started issuing the numbers. And as we see it today, you hear all these conspiracy theories that, come and go. And this was one of those conspiracy theories that the government was tracking us based on gender by the number that we were issued in our Social Security card. Just interesting facts. Social Security, as you well know, not only provides a monthly benefit, but they provide health care through the Medicare Act. So the first person, interesting enough, to receive a Medicare card was former President Truman. a lot of people will ask me is how much their monthly benefit is going to be. And then a lot of us can remember back in the day when we would get our earnings record from the Social Security Administration. It came in a 4 or 5 page document. It was green on the cover, and it would show all the years that we worked and how much we paid into the system. Right now, they don't do that. Their Social Security is requiring people to go online and create their account. It's called My Account with Social Security, and then you can access your earnings record and figure out how much you paid in the system. You can figure out what your retirement benefit is going to be. You can figure out what your disability benefit is going to be. You can figure out what a surviving spouse's benefit is going to be. So right now, the highest award for a Social Security retirement benefit, and that's retiring at full retirement age, is $3,011. The average is about $1,500 that we receive. Interesting enough, I did some research on, well, how much has Social Security spent in benefits over time, and I found a statistic that up until 2009, the government has spent $11.3 trillion. And when I say the government, essentially that's our money, the taxpayers' money. In comparison, if you look below the interesting fact, the cost of the Afghan war is about $5.8 trillion. So that as we know, the war lasted for 20 years. Social Security has been around since 1935. So the war has been a very costly expense at the taxpayers' expense, in my opinion. In 2019, 5.7 million people were newly awarded Social Security benefits. Now we have to understand under the Social Security Act, there's various benefits: disability benefits, retirement benefits, survivor benefits, widower benefits, children's benefits. And so it just does not encompass our retirement benefits that we receive. Right now, 69.1 million people are receiving some type of benefit through the Social Security Administration. So I think it's interesting that, this is a program that we all will tap into, hopefully, in our life and, make the best of it. There's talk right now that the Social Security fund is going to go dry. The well is going to go dry. And, that's a concern, but, I don't think our government is going to let the well go dry, and they'll find dollars to put back in the well, because there's going to be a lot of unhappy people that have been paying in the system, and then they find out the well is dry. And, that's a concern for the people in Washington as far as the jobs that they love. Okay, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit. I'm kind of starting from the beginning, but, throughout human society, history, we have threats of economic instability. Okay, those threats are threats to our economic security, let me put it that way. And by the way, the Social Security Act was initially going to be called the Economic Security Act, and then they changed it to the Social Security Act. But in any event, these are forces that we all face or could face. One is old age, one is unemployment, one is illness, one is disability, the big one is death. And we got to look at that and say, if any of these things happen to us, is our economic security going to be impacted? And the answer to that question is absolutely. So again, it goes back to when I was initially talking about this stuff, is that Social Security, whether it's a retirement benefit or a disability benefit, is a safety net for us. Okay. So historically, and again, this is what I find very interesting, is that the roots of the Social Security retirement, Social Security disability, and all those other programs came out of the Civil War. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what the heck did the Civil War have to do with the Social Security Administration? And this was the Civil War was really the first movement that we see that the government providing economic stability to families that had lost loved ones or were injured in the war. And that has transpired to veteran benefits right now. But can you imagine back in the Civil War? Now that's going back in time, and the wife and the family were at home, and the husband and the brothers are off to fight the war. And back in that day, the men and the boys, they were the breadwinners of the family. And so can you imagine being a wife and having children and knowing that your husband was killed in the war or came back, without a leg or without an arm? What are you going to do for financial security? And so the VA started a program where they're providing veterans and their families with benefits because of things, for their commitment to the, preserving the Union. And so that's where we see kind of the birth of the Social Security, benefits come into play. And so, I got a quick figure here. So again, what I just talked about, the breadwinners went off to fight the war, the spouse and the children were at home. Many of the soldiers never returned. The soldiers that did return, because of the wounds that they faced and the medical care and so forth, I mean, they were pretty much scarred for life. So as we move forward in history, which I'm trying to do, we all know the big event that happened in the 1930s. And for those that you don't, what happened in the 1930s is the Great Depression. And this hit the middle class extremely hard. Okay, it really didn't affect the poor because they were already dealing with tough times, and it really didn't affect the rich in that they had preserved and saved their stuff. But the middle class, up until the 1930s, those men and women are just working and living paycheck to paycheck. Because as we recall in time, we moved from an agriculture based economy to an industrial based economy. And so what we saw before the 1930s is a lot of people leaving the farm and going to the cities to work because it was good money and there was work. But when the Depression happened, when the stock market crashed, people, especially the middle class, found themselves out without a safety net. People had not saved for retirement. People had not saved for those rough waters. And lots and lots of families struggled, okay, to make ends meet. And sorry about my fast finger here. And at that time, people had not saved for retirement. There was no such thing as unemployment benefits. There was no such thing as spousal benefits for the stay-at-home spouse. There was no children benefits. There was no healthcare system set up in America. And that created some, major problems for people. And the government listened to that, and they saw what had happened. And so we saw with, again, what I was talking about with economic security, we saw assets being depleted. We saw reduction in labor. We saw families being torn apart. And there was no charity. And essentially, economic security had failed. So what happened is that, again, I'm just kind of going over what I just said, is the greatest impact, in my opinion, was on the middle class, and because this hit them with, blindsided them, and there was no safety net at all. So in the 1930s, the government started talking about this, and part of the child of the Great Depression, we all know, was the New Deal. And the Social Security Act was part of that New Deal. And there was a lot of debate before the Social Security Act was passed. Was this going to be a form of welfare? Was this going to be based on a form of volunteerism? Was this going to be a do-nothing approach and we'll just get through these hard waters? Or was there something new that we could come up with? And this new alternative was referred to as social insurance, all right? And please understand insurance. So we all pay our health insurance, car insurance, we pay homeowners insurance. So this is social insurance. And by that, what I mean is that every time we get a paycheck, we're paying a premium for this social insurance. And the social insurance was conceived by President Roosevelt. And it was essentially a notion to solve a problem presently, but a permanent fix to things that could happen down the road, to preserve this economic stability that we are all enjoying up until the 1930s. All right, and so the way that this was developed was that we wanted everybody that worked to contribute to the system, so they're essentially paying a premium for the social insurance. Social insurance, as we know, is Social Security retirement benefits. It is unemployment benefits. It is Social Security disability benefits. It is spousal benefits, widower benefits, children's benefits. We're all contributing to the system, okay? All right. So this is a great quote, and I ask you to take a minute to read this. This is from President Roosevelt. And this is a great quote. What what the government was trying to do to preserve social economic preservation for us, for the United States citizens. So I think this is a great quote, and it really hits home of what the Social Security Act was all about. All right. Okay, again, I have a new mouse here, and let me just back up here. Okay, so some of the notable programs of the Social Security Act of 1935 were retirement benefits for workers 65 and older, unemployment benefits, old age assistance, aid to dependent children, and funding states with welfare programs. So I asked the audience out there, what is missing from this? Okay, and the first thing that should come to mind is welfare, or not welfare, Medicare, right? So Medicare was not part of the program when the Social Security Act passed in 1935. I'm going to get into how the development of the Social Security Act and where it is today, but who pays for this? Well, it's you and I, the hardworking middle class, in my opinion, because it comes out of our taxes when we get a paycheck. And so when I look at my paycheck, I see this person named FICA, and I don't know who FICA is, but I know that FICA is taking a big chunk of my change. Well, FICA is actually the Federal Insurance Contribution Act. This is what is being used to fund the Social Security programs, not just the retirement programs, for all the programs. Okay. All right. So just historically, we see in 1935, the Social Security Act passed. And then nothing really happened until about 1950. And then in 1950, we see that the government said that, okay, well, not only are there retired individuals that need some help, but there's disabled individuals out there that need some help as well. So in 1950, we see Title II, the disability benefits, incorporated into the Social Security Act. And essentially, this is what I was doing before I joined David Carrier. Then we see in 1965, we see Medicare come into the picture, and that's incorporated into the Social Security Act. 1970s, we see the SSI, and that's Title 16 under the Social Security Act. And that's a needs-based program, and that's a program, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but SSI is a needs-based program. It's for those individuals that have not worked, have not paid into the system, but yet have some significant health issues and cannot work. So the government has set aside X amount of dollars for those individuals that, because of their health or illness, they can't work, but they need to have some type of support and not be a total burden on society. And then what is interesting is that in 1975, we see the cost of living adjustment, COLA, come into play. And so I find this development, this historical approach, really interesting because I had the opportunity earlier this summer to go over to Europe. And, the United States is a very, very, very young individual compared to the European countries. And we see our government, I think, in my opinion, working from 1935 to even to present, really putting an effort into developing a safety net for Americans in the event that they run into difficult times. All right, so let's kind of move on, shifting gears. We have a good idea of the historical approach to how the Social Security Act was developed and the various programs. I want to focus on the disability benefits, okay? So under the Social Security Act, there's two programs. One is the Social Security Disability Insurance Benefits. The government loves their acronyms, and this is defined as SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, under Title II of the Social Security Act. And then there is Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and that's under Title 16 of the Social Security Act. Okay. Both of these programs are meant to help people out, as I've indicated before, to get through the rough waters based on their health. So the Social Security Disability Insurance Program is a benefit that you and I pay for every time we get a paycheck. And so if we become disabled, and we're found disabled, as that term is defined under the Social Security Disability Act, then our monthly benefit is going to be based on how much we've worked and how much we paid into the system. Likewise, with supplemental security income, again, we have to have a finding that you're disabled as that's defined under the Social Security Disability Act. But if you don't have enough work credits, Social Security is going to look at the family income and your assets, and if you meet a level of poverty, then the Social Security Administration is going to pay that individual, I think it's about $740 per month right now, and then they become eligible for Medicaid. Quite frankly, I mean, we all know that you can make a lot more work and then you're going to receive either on the SSDI program or the SSI program. But we always have to keep in mind this is a safety net. For those folks that can't, this is, in the government's opinion, this is enough money, especially with SSI, to get people by. Well, $740, in my opinion, is not a whole lot of money to get by this day and age, but it's better than having zero. So, and then there's a lot of other resources out there that individuals that fall into the poverty level can tap into to better their lives. Okay. So if we do a comparison with the SSDI program and the SSI, I've talked about those to some extent, but the term disability is defined both under the SSI and SSDI program as the same, and it's a pretty high hurdle to jump over to meet that definition. With SSDI, we've all heard about work credits, and if you have earned 40 work credits, then you're going to be eligible for that program. If you don't have those work credits, then you're not going to be eligible for that, but yet you may be entitled to this needs-based program. And typically, we see this with the stay-at-home spouse that doesn't work, okay, and the other spouse is working under the table. Then the other spouse, leaves or passes away. We have a spouse here that has been the homemaker taking care of the family, and all of a sudden the spouse is left high and dry, and that's where we usually see the SSI program come into place. Okay, one good thing about the SSDI is that if you have dependent children, your children are eligible for a benefit. With the SSI program, there are no dependent benefits. With the SSDI program, the health insurance coverage is going to be Medicare. With SSI, it's Medicaid. And that is interesting because with Medicaid, as everybody should know on this call, Medicaid is our go-to for helping out with the cost of skilled nursing care. And individuals that are receiving SSI are on Medicaid, and so that's, essentially the door is kind of open to get Medicaid benefits if they end up going to skilled nursing care. On the flip side is if our health insurance is Medicare, if we're up in the years, Medicare does not provide for long-term care, then we have to fight tooth and nail to get on the Medicaid program to receive that long-term care help. With SSDI, there's past due benefits owed. What that means is that if I were disabled in June of 2020, and I file my application today, theoretically, I can go back a year from the date of my application and get those back due benefits that I should have been paid for all those months. On the flip side with SSI, there is no retroactive or back due pay. Your benefits will commence 1 month after you file your application. So if you were disabled back in 2020 and you're just eligible for SSI, they're going to look at your date of application as when your benefit will start. There's a huge disparity between the two benefits. Like I said, with SSI, it's capped at $740. With SSDI, it's based on how much you've earned and how much you've paid into the system. One of the big distinctions between the two programs is your assets. Now with SSDI, you can live in $1 million house, own a yacht, and 3 Mercedes and still qualify for SSDI because it's not based on what you own, what your assets are. It's based on how much you paid to the system over the years that you've worked. There's also no consideration of the household income. So if you're disabled but you have a spouse that's a doctor or a corporate executive making zillions of dollars, it doesn't matter because you're still entitled to a benefit that you paid for. But on the flip side, with SSI, if you owe more than $2,000 in assets, you don't qualify for SSI. In addition to that, they're going to look at your household income. So you may not have any assets, but if you live in a house and your spouse is working, well, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to qualify for SSI because you got, household income. And then they look at your assets too. Like if you own multiple cars, multiple pieces of property, you're not going to qualify for SSI. Again, it's a needs-based program, okay? So those are the big distinctions between the two programs, and they're pretty significant. And again, the crux is that you have to be found disabled, and that term is defined the same way, both on either program. All right. All right. So the question becomes, how do you apply for Social Security disability benefits? Well, it's similar in some extent to how you apply for Social Security retirement benefits. What I mean by that, it starts with an application. In this day and age, Social Security is requiring people to file their application online. So you visit SSA.gov, and it's a pretty easy, friendly menu to follow through to apply for benefits through the internet. Back in the day, you'd have to show up at the office and fill out this 20-page application right there at the window, or you'd submit the hard copy. Well, again, we've moved away from that. Once you file the application, the process is that Social Security will review your claim. They will send your claim to the medical component of the Social Security Administration, which is referred to as the Department of Disability Determination Services, where a doctor or various doctors, a team of doctors, will look at your medical records and may send you up for an evaluation, and then they'll issue a medical opinion whether or not your impairments, whether it's physical or mental or the combination, would meet the definition of disabled, as that's defined under the Social Security Act. And if everything goes according to plan, and you file your application, 5 or 6 months down the road, you're going to receive a favorable decision, and your benefits will commence. If you don't receive a favorable decision, that process could be last to up to 18 months, even longer. And when I was doing this type of work, I would get a lot of people saying, well, what am I going to do for 18 months if I don't have any income coming in? I actually had people living in their cars and, just trying to get by until Social Security made a decision on their application. And so it can be a very long, stressful road. And this is a benefit that you and I pay for, and why is it so stressful and why is it so long? Well, as you guys know, and as I know, there's bad apples in the bunch. They have spoiled the bunch. And so there's some folks out there that think that if they have a bellyache or a toothache, they can get on the ticket and get a check every month from the U.S. taxpayer. And so Social Security, they screen these things extremely well, and there's a lot of factors that go into that process. I'm not going to put you to sleep if you're not sleeping already, hopefully not, but there's a lot of factors that go into that evaluation process. And the good news for the taxpayer is that the Social Security Administration is always reviewing these cases. So they call it a continuing disability review. So every 2 years, if not sooner, Social Security is picking up that file and looking at it to see if somebody still qualifies, because they don't want people that have improved their health but still receiving a check. They want to get those people out the door and have them work. So there's safeguards in there that, again, in my opinion, protect the U.S. taxpayer from somebody living on our dime when they can actually go out there and work. But what really gets me, and this is what we see at the office too, is that, this is a government benefit. Why is it so hard for us to get a government benefit? I mean, the rich don't have to worry about it, and the poor, they don't have to worry about it, but it's you and me that play by the rules every day of our life, and then we need some help. We got to essentially kick that door down. But it can be kicked down. You can persevere. If, like with our office, if you have, good folks fighting for you, good attorneys fighting for you, good support staff fighting for you, you can claim the benefits that you're entitled to. And these are benefits that you're entitled to. Like you, I've never taken a free ride in anybody's train, and in my life, I don't want to, but I just want some payback to what I paid into the system. And so again, going back to the philosophy that David and I have, I think we see eye to eye on this stuff. One is that these are benefits that you and I paid for. The bulk of the strength of our economy is on the middle class, but the middle class always takes it on the chin when it comes to us asking for some help because we've fallen on hard times. And the last thing that we want to see, that's David and I, and especially you, is that you're going broke, either waiting for a benefit and borrowing from friends, or having the Social Security, Medicaid, DDHS, and who runs the state Medicaid program. It's federal dollars, Medicaid program, but the state runs the rules and the regulations. And, we see sad stories, people going broke to qualify for a benefit. And that's, That doesn't sit well with David. It doesn't sit well with me, and it surely should not sit down with the working middle class. And I just, again, I should give you this attorney disclaimer at the beginning, and this is just for educational purposes. I haven't really talked about the specifics of the law. If you have specific questions, you can always reach out to me or the office to get into the weeds a little bit. But this is for us to understand that, our government, as bad as we talk about what's going on in Washington, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever, I mean, they do good work. In my opinion, it's just a matter of us pushing them to do the work. And that's why we go vote.